guys, it's Annie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video I'm going to be talking about research. Wait, not this kind of research. About literary research in the Anglo-Saxon, medieval, and Renaissance era. Let's get started. So for today's video, I asked you guys to come up with a list of questions you have for me about research, and I'm going to answer them in this video. So let's get to it. So the first question I got asked was, why study literature? So I'd say that literature is most relevant in the way that it connects people all over the world, and it creates and teaches valuable lessons that no matter the language you speak or the part of the world that you're from, everyone can understand. And these languages all come together to form one world library. And even though it seems like there's more languages on Earth than there are people and animals combined, there's not that many when it gets translated into one universal truth that everyone across the globe can understand. So I believe that past literature is still relevant today because authors continue to use the same writing styles that they used in the Anglo-Saxon, medieval, and Renaissance eras. However, I don't believe that it's as relatable to today as it was back thousands of years ago. Because today, if you try to tell Beowulf that there were more issues in the world than killing monsters, that would be like telling Rachel Price that it's not necessary to bring her makeup to the Congo. It wouldn't work, right? So that's why I don't believe it's as relatable. However, I do think it is helpful for people of today's society to be able to understand the morals that people held in the past societies and to be able to see how different our standards and morals are today. So I'd say the number one thing I learned during the research process was that close reading is your number one best friend. What I mean by this is that analyzing literature is one of the most important steps of the research process because it helps you to understand the overall topic that the piece of research is talking about, and it also helps you to not miss any key details or plot development or character development that the topic is talking about. So through my close reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream, I learned that it reflected many characteristics of Romanticism, such as rebellion. And so one of the ways during the Renaissance era that Romanticism was rebellious of standard rule was that authors were used to writing strict standard stories about battle and honor and death, and instead they were starting to explore more imaginative ways of magic, love, and art. And this was reflected in the way that through A Midsummer Night's Dream, when Hermia went against her father's wishes to marry Demetrius and she chose Lysander instead, which shows that she was rebellious of the strict rule of obeying her father and instead chose her own true love form. So throughout the writing process, I learned that it can be really hard to maintain your focus on something when you're writing a really long essay about it. So it's important that you have other people edit your work to check for errors that you may have missed when reading the same thing multiple times. It's also important to review your own skill set before going in to write an essay, so that way you know the things you need to do in order to be prepared and get a good grade. So I learned a lot of things throughout my research, and one of the most valuable things was time management. Time was a sprinter, and if you didn't keep your eye out on her as she ran around the track, she would run right past you and be across the finish line before your assignment was due. It was important to keep the due dates in mind so you could have everything prepared in time. So another skill I acquired was organization. Much like Iago and Othello, he had to keep all of his manipulations organized in his head, so that way when it came time to execute them, it was easy for him. I also learned how to make deeper connections. Throughout my research, I noticed that Romanticism and Expressionism were two separate ideas, but when they came together, they both had similar ideals that created these beautiful paintings that expressed the way people felt towards each other and towards other things. Another valuable skill I learned was MLA source formatting. Before this, I had known how to do simple in-text citations, but I never really cited it correctly on my works cited, and it also helped me to better my skills in citing them in in-text citations. Time management is a really valuable skill when it comes short-term and long-term. Short-term, for the AP exam next semester, we need to know how to manage our time in order for us to not be stressing out when it's a few days before the test and we realize we haven't prepared well for it. And time management in college is super important because it's always going to feel like we're racing against the clock to get all of our projects done on time. Lastly, making connections is really important. On the AP exam, we're going to see a lot of new literature that we aren't used to, and so it's important to be able to understand how to connect what we learned in class to new pieces of literature we're reading. In college, it's important to make connections to what we're learning in class to the outside world so that it better makes sense in your head so you can understand it and do better in the class. Organization is a really important skill next semester, as we need to keep our notes and everything organized so that way when we're going to study for the AP exam, it's all laid out. And in college, we're going to have a lot more freedom, and so we need to be able to keep everything organized and our schedules and our homework and our schoolwork so that way we're not distracted by anything. Lastly, citing is super important, as next semester we'll continue to be writing more and more papers and we need to know how to cite correctly. And in college, it's really important that you cite correctly, because if you don't, you could get kicked out. So this semester, we sharpened our skills in close reading and analyzing, which will be a very important skill to take into the AP exam and in college and in future classes, as we're going to be given new pieces of literature that we've never encountered before, and our close reading skills will help us to get to the correct answer. So by reading so many novels and studying so much vocab, we've expanded our knowledge of words into words we never thought we would know, and we've also dug deeper into research to find out the relevance of finding from multiple sources in order to check that your information is accurate and that you can find as much information as possible on the topic that you're researching. For my last question, I have, what do you want to learn about studying literature in second semester? So I hope to learn how to make comparisons between characteristics of past literature and characteristics of present literature and compare them and see what the differences and similarities are. I also hope to learn about what styles of literature were most important to people during the different time periods and how that was relevant to what was going on in those time periods and what people's lives were like. Overall, the research process is long and grueling, but if you keep your focus forwards and know your end goal, and you break your work up to reach that end goal, the process will be rewarding in the end when you're left with a paper that you're proud of. Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you guys found the information helpful. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below.